All right, hey guys, good morning. Welcome to class. Hopefully everyone's doing good and welcome. Hopefully everything's going okay with you. And I'm kind of eager to jump in and start off this morning. But how are you guys doing? How's your morning going? Everything going good? You go ahead and take a moment. Share a little bit if you have any interesting topics or anything of that sort, which is great. Feel free. And while you're doing that, let me go ahead and just open up a couple of things that I wanted to look at the schedule. Okay, great. Yeah, my morning's doing pretty good too. It is definitely well, more active today. Also, today's my wife's birthday as well, so I got to make sure that she is definitely honored today, which is like gonna be tricky. I should have got my present a little bit earlier. I ordered a present from the Disney store, and for her, I got her like one of the Disney backpacks, and it's running a little bit late. So I was like, great. It's supposed to be here like yesterday, but onto campus because I wanted it be delivered here to work, but the time is a little bit off, so it actually went off by a day or two. So that's what happens. That's what happens when I try to schedule things a little bit too close to the birthdays. But we'll be good. We'll be set, and we'll be coming really close there. I want a couple things, guys, before we do the warm up. Just as a quick announcement, and okay. Since today is the 29th, tomorrow and let's take a look. Okay, tomorrow the 30th and then the 1st, which is July the 1st, are going to be asynchronous days. Basically what that means is that you'll still be logging on to see a pre-recorded lesson related to the magazine project and working on those projects asynchronously, independently, for that day. So pretty much the way it's going to work is that we're recording right now. That's going to be today's lesson. As soon as we do the lessons for today, we're going to work independently on your projects, and then tomorrow and for the following day, I'll have contrast and type pre-recorded lecture ready to go, headline secondary leads pre-recorded ready to go. And then basically for those days, you can actually log in and see them. They'll be ready, honestly, today. So if you want to get a little bit of a head start, you can. But I just wanted to make sure that those are going to be days where you'll be working on your projects, getting those in. And when we get back on class next Monday, we basically have one more day, which is July 5th, to complete those magazine covers. Presentations due magazines on the 6th, so you will be talking about your project as a class in its entirety. So you'll be presenting your design, talking a little bit about your target audience. Who knows, we might even have like a guest come in and take a look at some of your designs if that's the case. And then for the final, we're going to be putting together a portfolio of all the projects that you've created in the class. So that's all the exercises. Everything will be put into a portfolio where you will have your final project. So the final project is not the magazine. The final project in this class is the portfolio, which is a collection of all the exercises and work you've been doing for the last 20 plus days, or at that time will be 20 plus days. Okay. So yesterday we obviously left some time for you guys to catch up on some assignments. That was basically to see where everyone's at. I had a couple of good discussions with some folks regarding their projects, how to catch up, and also like what they can do to do that. So I'll just briefly mention a couple things that just for clarity, and then we'll get into the magazine project. But basically, one of the first things that is mentioned is that you can turn in your assignments late. Okay. But the issue with that is, as you know, every day there's something new. So for every day you're behind, there's one more day of project or exercises due on top of that. So the magazine project is going to be actually piece by piece, and we won't really have any new things going in the magazine project, but you will be expected to have the necessary items that are indicated in the rubric in order for that to occur. So you basically want to make sure you're watching the videos, participating, turning in, and sharing your links. So this week, you kind of have probably maybe the last chance to catch up. And then after that, those scores and everything are going to be due by July the 8th, which is the final day of class. Okay, so that's kind of be the format. That's how we're going to go about doing it. So you always want to make sure that you're keeping up, catching up, and setting it up. So just setting that out. A couple of things that I noticed in just the conversations I've been having with students is that we've had some students that have never really been contacted by the college in terms of counselors or anything of that sort regarding their project. Right now, if it's summer class, it's different because you're joining us from a different school, and for the first time, that's a little bit different, right? But for some students, this is like literally the next class, or some of you guys, the first class where you've had little to no contact with a counselor in terms of just like best practices or how to do well in the class, right? So that could be a challenge, right? And I'm very thankful that I got a chance to talk to you guys in regards to that. So we've had those conversations. Some of the things that we mentioned in the conversation was like one thing was location, right? Students are not expected to be, quote, home to attend class, right? You can be just about anywhere logging into class, because obviously we're not requiring students to turn on their cameras unless it's mentioned in advance for presentations or something of that sort, right? So in fact, let me actually start here instead of going into like the expectations, right? If you're in college and you're starting out in college, it is not the same as high school, okay? Meaning, you are in high school, there are mandates, rules, laws that require students to have certain things acquired by the time they graduate. In college, that is not the same. In college, there are certain rules or things of that sort to get like certificates, degrees, and everything of that sort in order to transfer to colleges. But the moment you get into college, you are your own advocate, if that makes sense, right? You have to advocate for yourself. The teacher can push and do everything they can in their power, but really coming in, it's not us tell you. It's kind of like you have to kind of like advocate for yourself. So the analogy I used yesterday was, is that don't treat college like you do shopping for clothes, which is if something doesn't fit, you have to say something to the owner of the store and get the fit, right? So if you buy an outfit and it doesn't fit, then you always say, I want to replace this, right? I want to switch this for something else. You have to be like that with your college education. If a class doesn't fit, if something doesn't quite work out, it is up to you to mention it to counseling or admissions and records or your teacher, right? Your professor. You got to mention that this is not quite fitting. Can I get something to fit my situation or my circumstance, right? And we all know that there's either one of two ways they can answer. They can say, absolutely, yes, we'll make it work for you. Or I'm sorry, I can't do that. Our policy is not to do that. But either way, you still have a 50-50 chance. So it helps to actually like ask. Does that make sense? If it does, you can give me a little thumbs up emoji. So, you know what I mean? Like this is basically, you have to advocate for yourself. Okay. If you're, for students that are not showing up to class, if you don't show up, then okay, that's on you. There's obviously going to be a consequence, right? But it's up to you to catch up if the professor allows you to catch up. If you don't show and it's the day of the test, there's no makeup, that's their policy, right? You can ask to make it up, but if they clearly say yes or no, then that's the thing. So it's very much like clothing. It's like a restaurant, right? You order something. This is the education that you want to get out of it. And if you're not getting what is mentioned on the menu, on the schedule, right, and the policies, then you have to say something to the owner, and you have to say, hey, this is not what I'm getting. This is not what I'm signing up for. can you fix this? Because obviously we're all human and the people can make mistakes. But if it happens again, then now you have to basically say, you know what, I don't want this. I'm going to go to another restaurant, right? So that's kind of how you want to take your education. You want to be an advocate for yourself and go and push for yourself, right? Now, for some students, this is the first time being in college, right? And if this is your first ever experience in college during COVID, it has been challenging because technically there's supposed to be check-ins, right? Or it's recommended for students to check in with the counselor at certain times to basically do a follow-up, right? It's kind of like a doctor's appointment. The doctor doesn't call you to do your annual checkup. At some point, you got to book to do your checkup. You have to do the same thing for your education. Every year, you got to make an appointment to get a checkup on your grades, a checkup on your performance, a checkup on your degree, right? You got to get a checkup on your, when it comes to your oil, you got to do checkups, guys. Because at some point, when it starts breaking down, the car breaks down or the engine overheats or or your health starts to start to fade a little bit, then you go in typically when you go in. You don't want to do that with your education because the equivalent to like starting to get issues is when you get a certificate and you don't get a job, or you get like some type of degree, but you realize that it doesn't qualify in certain companies, or you transfer to a college and you find out that the classes you took don't actually transfer, right? It's really important that everybody checks in with their counselors, with admission and records, and basically say, hey, I need to talk to someone in counseling. I like to do a follow-up. I will need to do a checkup on my performance to see how things are going, okay? So you really want to, that's the mindset that you got to do with college, right? This is not like high school where they tell you what to do because by law, we have to get accomplishments done, right? In college, you sign up, you're paying for it, right? Or if some of you are getting it for 2 years for free, but at some point you're going to pay for it, right? And you got to treat it like a restaurant, like clothing, like fashion. This doesn't fit. I want this. I'm not getting this. How do I know I'm going to get a job, right? What is the percentage of graphic design students that get hired after your program, right? Like these are the questions you need to ask. Like how successful are students after they graduate? It's called I believe it's called like a job performance transfer, or the job engagement percentage, right? There's actually data where colleges look at students and get a percentage of how many of them actually start working after they obtain the degree from that college. And so I think it's job placement rate, right? What is the job placement rate for a college, right? And so they don't tell you this, right? But because the world's changing and sometimes the percentages might be low, but it's your job to do that, okay? So you want to make sure that you're looking into that. So if you're going to transfer to a college, write this down, job placement rate, okay? You want to make sure what that's looking like, right? So I'm trying to get you guys to be an advocate for yourself, push for yourself, and look, we're online, we're on the internet. If we're passive on this stuff, then at some point you got to switch off the sitting down watching TV mode and jump in. Does that make sense? And you are jumping in. You obviously are here, but you got to create, you got to engage, you got to interact, right? And so I'm trying to get as much time for you guys to build designs, interact, and shoot it out to me as much as possible. Okay? Does this make sense? You can give me a little thumbs up if that makes sense. I'm not mad or anything of that sort. I'm pretty passionate. I think at the end of the day, I'm trying to get you guys to shift mindsets, and all students, quite frankly, to shift their mindset from a passive to an active role. And it's not, and that means proactive, take action. And so you want to get to that point. Okay. So wherever you are, wherever you're at, we want to make sure you're engaged at 100%. Okay. And and also this is the scary part too. I'm glad you're here, you're logging on and you're logging in live, but that's not the grade. Like if you show up, that doesn't actually dictate your grade. It's the work that dictates the grade. So, if you're not here, it helps to be here, but to obviously give you feedback, to check in, right? Do it in real time. But if you just show up, that doesn't get you a grade. So showing up does not equal grades, guys, and that's different from high school. In high school they say show up, and you get perfect attendance, and the reason for that is because the state awards schools and gives them money for students that attend. It doesn't work that way in college. In college, it's not. You don't get awarded for showing up. You get awarded for doing the work, right? So college professors don't care if you show up, right? I care if you show up because obviously, I'm concerned and you're designers and this is a very different world. But on average, most college professors don't care if you show up or not. They care about results, and they want results. And if you show them results, you get the work done, you get a grade, and you move on, and you get a certificate, you get a degree, and you get a job placement opportunity. Showing up doesn't fly. So I know I don't want to be too intense, but I gotta throw it out there. I gotta let you guys know, because some of you guys are not hearing this because you haven't been on campus since COVID started, and some of you are going to end up going through college, or at least through Rio, or doing 2 years without stepping onto a campus or getting all the resources. So I'm going to mention it obviously to this college and talk about it like, hey, we need to engage our students, but I'm just taking the role of a counselor right now, and I just want to counsel you guys, okay? And if that makes sense, give me a little thumbs up, and then we'll set you up there, okay? That's the main idea. You have to fight for yourself, and you have to make sure that you're advocating for yourself at all times, and you got to get results, okay? Do the work, because in college, attendance does not matter. It does not matter. It helps for engagement, focus, and making sure where your mental health is, which are very important things, but it does not equal a passing grade, okay? The work does. Okay, that being said, okay, I know we're doing like a little family meeting right now. The next thing I'll say is, you do not have to be home to do this class, right? In the beginning of the semester, I mentioned distraction-free environment. If you're home, then you're not required to be home, right? Again, high school, it's different. In high school, they want to make sure you're home. In college, we don't really care where you're at. Obviously, we want to make sure you're safe, because we care about results. So you could be anywhere and everywhere, but you do not have to be home in a distracted environment. You want to be anywhere where there is distraction free, where you can focus. Does that make sense? So I was mentioning to a couple students yesterday, if you're home and you can't do the work because you're distracted, go somewhere else, preferably outdoors, where there's free Wi-Fi. I mentioned Starbucks. I said Starbucks was it's now starting to open up. There's free Wi-Fi at Starbucks. You can go to Starbucks where there's little to no distractions, hopefully. Get an outside table, log into the Wi-Fi, take your laptop if you got your laptop access. If you have a laptop that can access Wi-Fi, go for it. You can go to a Starbucks and do this class and do the work if you're distraction free. Okay, so you're not required to be home. You could be in Big Bear, you could be in Cancun, you could be in Hawaii, wherever you are, as long as you're logging in. Because again, it doesn't matter if you attend or not. What matters is getting the results. If you're in it, you have to be in a place where it's distraction free. So try a coffee shop outdoors. Try to log in, be in a place where you're distraction free. Okay, maybe you're at work and you don't start work till later, or you have an afternoon shift. Maybe you can work out something where you get free Wi-Fi. Do a class at work before you do your shift, not during work, of course. And you can log in that way. So however way you're logging in, you do not have to be home technically. Okay, you just have to be somewhere where you're distraction free. And so these are some helpful tips. Now that things are opening up, this will help you kind of get to a distraction-free environment. Okay, does that make sense too? If that does, give me a little thumbs up emoji, and then we'll set you up there. Okay. So yeah, these are helpful tips, guys. Again, I was very shocked that when I heard some students have not heard from their counselor, talk to their counselor, right? You always want to make sure you're fighting for yourself. And making sure that you're fighting for your attention as well. Okay. because the showing up part is not enough. The hope is that you can advocate, take action, go somewhere where where there's little to no distractions, and basically get results. Okay. So those are a couple things that I'm saying. I want to mention that to you. We'll get you rocking and rolling and set up there. Okay. So we will, if you have any questions or comments, you can go ahead and type it in the chat right now. I just want to be really clear and just mention a couple of those things so we can move forward. Okay. Because I know there's a couple of folks also watching rebroadcast. And so we want to make sure we're doing that as well. Okay. So, and if you're in high school right now, this is a great opportunity to hear this stuff now, so that at the moment you step back onto a campus, you know exactly what the mindset is, right? Not every professor says these things to students. The hope is that a high school counselor or your high school teachers say this to you, or parents or family members say this. But you know what? At some point, I throw it out there and mention it to students as well, because I'm starting to realize that as well. So fight for yourself, fight for your education. This stuff is like fashion. This stuff is like food. You got to get what you ordered. If it doesn't work, say something and get that, and get what you want, get that right size, get that right fit for your education. And definitely look up those job placement rates and make sure that wherever you're going, that they have a pretty successful job placement rate, because that means that that you're getting the result, which is an education that will ultimately lead to a vocation or for work, especially in this field of graphic design. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So that's kind of my wisdom, my 2 cents there, and I just wanted to mention a couple of things before we jump in. Okay, so switching gears, warm up. Let's go ahead and do the warm up for today. Now, the warm up for today is a discussion called Name That Magazine. So if you recall, we are now in the design portion. And so today, the objective for today, actually, I'll show you the objective first, is we're going to do 2 things today, okay? We're going to design the masthead of your magazine, right? Using some typographic theory principles. And we're also going to select a central image that has some type of symbolism built into it, right? A symbolic central image using something called semiotics. So those are the 2 goals for today. We'll go over those steps, but we can't go and create and design a masthead without a name of a magazine, okay? So the warm-up / discussion post for today, and let's take about 10 minutes to put this together. But I would like for you guys to meet over on Canvas and answer the question, what is the name of your magazine or working name, and who is your target audience? Okay, so because we can't design unless we have those 2 things on point. Okay, now if you haven't turned in those assignments, then take your best guess, and at least let's get something, because without those 2 pieces of information, we can't really do the exercise for today. And so you can stick around and watch the lesson, but I highly recommend you go back and complete your target audience empathy map, and prior to moving forward to today's exercise. Okay, so those are my 2 cents there. Okay, let's go ahead and publish. Okay, and refresh that page, and then we'll get you over. I'm always missing that publish button, so thank you, Francesca, appreciate it. So should be right here under discussion, Name That Magazine. It's day 14, masthead cover line central image, and here it is. What is the name of your magazine? And please take a moment to describe your target audience. Okay. Once you're done, go ahead and type in the chat you're completed, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay. All right, guys. We'll take a few moments and we'll begin momentarily. Okay, and if anyone's still typing, can you give me a little thumbs up? I just want to see who's still working on the warm-up. Okay, okay, give you guys a couple more minutes there, okay? We'll just need like a name and then who do you think your target audience would be? Okay, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, guys, so if you're still typing, go ahead and continue to do so. I just wanted to take a couple of quick looks at your responses, right? And then just trying to make some connections. So if I take a look at some of the warm-ups replies here, for example, Francesca saying that her magazine is going to be called Thread and Needle, or Thread and Needle magazine. Target audience is people who enjoy fashion or in the fashion industry. Okay, great. Typically, most magazines will probably be like no more than two words, right, or two names. 2 words, 2 to 3 words typically. So if it's thread and needle, that should be okay. Now, because it's called Thread and Needle magazine, then as I'm looking at this her project and all of your projects, I'm always going to ask this question as we're building your project for the next week, right? Thread and Needle magazine. Okay. Based on your empathy map, right? Is all her design or Francesca's design decisions connecting to Victoria Evans, who is her persona? Like, if this is the audience that she's targeting, right? It's basically an outgoing, dedicated, perfectionist, creative, stylish female, right? That is living in New York City. Then does this magazine, will Francesca's design decisions reflect this personality? Okay, does that make sense? If it does, give me a little thumbs up, right? So we always want to make decisions, okay, for Victoria Evans, who's 28 years old, that lives in New York, okay? So that's how I'm looking at your projects, right? Not, I obviously will look at it from principles of design, like, oh, there's a focal point, there's contrast, we have fonts. We'll walk through that together as a class. But at the end of the day, does this look like a magazine for the New York fashionista? Okay, so that's how I'm looking at all your projects. Okay, so right. So that being said, right, Kalena, you said that your magazine is going to be called Conversion, right? People that want to see change in waste products are dealt with and how they can be turned into new items. Okay, so then that being said, if it's called Conversion, people with waste products, then I'm going to come back to, right, the profile, and I'm going to say, okay, are we making design decisions based on 1 or 2 people? Because I saw 2 profiles in here, Kalena, right? So if the magazine is called Conversion, then in my head, I should see a relationship between the profile personality in relation to that person. So does this magazine reflect Jack Porter, who's age 13, or really both, to be honest, or Felicia, who's 30? Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Like, Kalena, would you say that your magazine is targeting Felicia, or would you say it's targeting Jack? Right? Because a magazine targeting a 15-year-old is going to look very different than a magazine targeting a 30-year-old, right? So there is a little bit of a thought process behind that, okay? So that's the decision. So if it's going to be based on change in the waste products being dealt with, does a 15-year-old care about waste products and the way it's being dealt with, right? Perhaps. I'm not saying that it's not a likelihood, but does it reflect in the personality of this person, right? Jack is 8th grade, learning waste crisis. Jack wants to make a difference in his neighborhood, collecting, properly dealing with waste. Okay. So wants to help, dislikes ignorant people, dislikes time, research, innovative, right? And he's from San Francisco. Now, Felicia wants to make a difference in how the world deals with waste. She has noticed how many recycling plants don't deal with waste as well as they could. She wants to help promote a business that uses relatively new technology to effectively address the current problems with waste management. Now, see, this is a good example, right? Because what's going on here is that the way the magazine is going to look for a 30-year-old, or I want to make it appealing to a 30-year-old woman, very different if I for a 5th or a 13-year-old. Okay, so whatever the design decision is, I would say focus on one profile, Kalena. Okay, is it the 30-year-old that is interested in technology to help the world? That magazine is going to look and have very different types of article titles on the cover, and even a picture. The central image will look very different than for a 30-year-old female versus a 13-year-old male. Okay, so that's the lens I'm going to look at your project. Okay, so that's why this stuff matters, right? Then you don't have to ask me if it looks right or wrong. Then you can ask the question, does my design decision work for Jack, or does my design decision work for Felicia? Okay, so that's the key to this whole project, is that don't wait for your professor to say if it's right or wrong. Ask yourself, is this right or wrong for my viewer, for my reader that I targeted? Does this make sense, guys? If it does, give me a thumbs up emoji. That's why the last exercises are so important, and they add on one on top of the other, okay? Because if you don't know who your target audience is, you can't go to the next phase, right? And so that's why this stuff matters. We have to research, we have to know who we're talking to and communicating with. This is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to graphic design, okay? We're not designing in a vacuum now. We're designing for a person, okay? So that's the theme. That's how we're going to go about this, okay? Okay, so I know, I don't want to sound like I'm, preaching to the choir, but it's really important that we kind of talk about that. Okay. Okay, that being said, we're going to kick this off, but let me start off with the central image, and then we're going to go into the program and start building this, okay? Now, normally I do a step 1, but let me just give you a quick overview of what all the steps are for this project, okay? Now, today we're doing basically steps 1 and 2, but here it is overall, like how this project's gonna flow. There's ultimately like 5 steps to designing a publication, specifically a magazine publication, right? Step 1, you got to design your masthead, right? And that's the title of your magazine using a particular font of some sort, right? Typographic font. Can't really do that without a name. That's why we did the warm-up. That's why the discussion today was, what's the name? Okay, so that's the first part. Step 1 is we have to design the masthead. We got to know the name of the magazine, right? Step 2 is we're going to create a document in Photoshop, obviously, but really is that we're going to create or locate a central image that is appropriate for your audience, right? For the topic, for the theme of your magazine. And so we'll talk a little bit about central images and symbolism behind photographs. So if you're a photographer, this is for you. If you're a filmmaker or want to get into film, this is for you. If you want to get into fashion, this is for you. This is for you either way, right? Central image is really important, but semiotics is even more important as well, okay? Step 4 is we contrast, there's that key word, contrast, the headline and the cover lines, or the articles as they're also called, right? So 2 font sizes, typically 2 different colors, to create contrast. So we're doing contrast of size, contrast of shapes, contrast of colors in the world of type. So that's step 4. And then last step is think about your target audience, right? We just mentioned that, right? As we move type, images, contrast, right? That whole process is in and of itself a lot, right? Starting out, but at some point we got to zoom out, go back to the beginning, and say, does this still communicate to our target? Is this for the New York fashionista? Is this magazine for the 30-year-old, conservative, right? Or the sustainable minded person? Is this magazine for the Latina that is into makeup? Is this magazine for X person, right? So that's going to be the key to it, right? Like that's the key to it. So we want to make sure, excuse me. I want to make sure my screen doesn't act all weird there. So is that the key? Is that the key for step 5? Is your target audience being represented, okay? And we'll get into Photoshop in just a moment, but those are the 5 steps, okay? So just to kind of give you an overview, we're going to create that masthead for the magazine. We're going to open up a doc for a central image. So that's like step 2 and 3. Okay, step 4 is going to contrast those headlines and cover lines. Step 5 is think about your target audience and adjust accordingly. Okay, so those are the steps. And we're going to get started, and we're going to talk a little bit about the central image. Now, I'm going to kind of reverse it a little bit because I do know that typography is important, but I feel led to kind of go the direction of the central image instead and talk about that central image, okay? Now, the way you can find your image, okay, or a good central image, the definition of a central image is basically the main cover or the main image of the magazine. You can create it in one of 2 ways, right? You can take a photograph, right? We have some folks that are into photography. Yes, you can use your own photographs for this project. If you want to use your own photos, go for it. We've had students use their own photos for topics in their magazine, and you can use your own photos. Can I combine photos in Photoshop and make like a collage? Yeah, absolutely. You could totally do that. You can actually create a collage using found images, your own photographs, or a combination of the 2. You can do that. Can I use my drawings? Yeah, you can use your drawings. You can use your drawings if you wish, absolutely. And can I obviously find images online and use those images and adjust those in Photoshop, like adjust effects or add color or image adjustments or a combination of the 2 or all. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of freedom in how you modify your image, but is that image relating to your central? Is that central image relating to your target, right? To your audience, to your reader? That's at the core of it, right? So that's the first step of this puzzle, okay? To do that. Now, probably the website I'm going to recommend for this is going to be, like I said, now, if you're going to you can use your photos, you can use your drawings. If you're going to use those found images that I mentioned before, if you recall, unsplash.com is great. So good free images or imagery is, I would say, www.unsplash.com. And if you recall, we use that for your collage, right? So definitely use Unsplash for finding those images. I'm a little bit, I kind of don't like Google Images as much. I know I used to push Google Images a little bit more, but that was pre-Unsplash, like Foundries for free sites with good photographs. So I would say if we're going to source photos, go to Unsplash. You can use Google to source your images or anywhere where you can find good images of that sort. But definitely, I would say if you're going to pull free stuff, go with the high quality free photos like Unsplash. Okay, and it's in the chat right now so that you can take a look at that. www.unsplash.com, and also mention it in the project notes as well for today. Okay. Now, when you select a central image, typically most people like to do is select like a celebrity and put them on the cover. Okay, now you can do that. That's totally fine. But I kind of want to take a moment and talk about semiotics when it comes to central images, or symbolism in photographs. Has anyone ever had a lesson on symbolism and photos by any chance? If you have, maybe give me a little thumbs up emoji. But has that ever been something where you've seen it or anything of that sort, or talked about symbolism in photographs, anything of that sort? Okay, totally cool. This is the first time. That's good. That's a good thing. Well, this is something that I wished I learned in college. I don't think it was really like highlighted as much. And so I'm going to kind of switch gears and lower the music there. But I think it's important to talk about, because there is actually symbolism is actually like this structured thing that we kind of hear about in like high school, and it's normally like slapped onto like a writing class and never really connected to images or art to some way, right? And so I kind of want to talk about it a little bit, because semiotics, when I stumbled upon this, it was like, oh, the light went off in my head, and it actually helped me kind of design better, be a better designer. And semiotics is just a fancy word for the study of signs or symbols. So there's actually a topic on this, right? Which is symbolism itself, right? The word semiotics comes from the Greek word semiotikos, which means the interpreter of signs, or the person that can read symbols, right? Signing is just super important to everyone. It's important to human existence because it underlines all forms of communication, right? Within this semiotics, or this language of symbols, anything is used for human communication. There we go. And I mean anything, right? A sign could be a gesture, a facial expression, poems, writing, a certain ritual that you do, right? Your clothes, your food, the music that you listen to or create, Morse code, marketing, commercials, films. It is in everything. I just found it really shocking that there wasn't a class on this. And I actually think if I had to create a class, of my own, I would basically do like, maybe not a semester is appropriate. I would do a class on semiotics and literally dig deep into like, what is the symbolism? What does the symbols of human communication look like? And how do we look at this, right? Designers kind of do it on their own, but we don't teach this stuff, right? And so what symbol is this? What does this normally represent, right? And type it in the chat. If you saw this graphic, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you see this, right? What does this symbolize? Okay, take a moment and you go ahead and type it in the chat. What does this image symbolize? Okay. And there's different meanings too, right? It doesn't have to be one. Okay, that's why I asked the question. What's the first thing that came into your mind? There's no right or wrong. If you thought Disney, that's a valid answer too. Okay, Pirates of the Caribbean. That's the first thing that came into my mind, Professor. Okay, what else comes into your mind when you see this image? Okay, death, poison. Yeah, I thought Pirates of the Caribbean, to be honest, right? Deadly. Okay, so, right? But notice that majority pretty much goes towards like this main idea of like danger, poison, or deadly. But 3 different responses, right? 2 same, 1 different, right? Okay, so if you think about a heart, then type in the chat, what are some words that associate with hearts? Like what comes to your mind when you think about a heart? Okay, now again, the first thing that comes into your mind, okay? Maybe and if you have the second or third, type it in. But what typically is the word or phrase or an idea associated with this? Okay. Okay, love, Valentine's Day. Okay, cool, right? And if we looked at what people would typically say, they would say the same things. They would say love, Valentine's Day. For some, it's care, feelings, blood, they think about muscle, the color red, life. Okay, so this simple heart has some representation, but if you ask a lot of people, a lot of different people, they would have the first thing that comes into their mind would be a lot of different things, right? And so one symbol, but a lot of different meanings, right? Now, if we think about, a heart, right? People will be actually thinking about, if I said the word heart, you would actually think about the image on the left, right? And maybe not so much the image on the right. So if I said the word, right? If I showed you the picture, then obviously it changes a little bit differently, right? And so the whole idea of like one or the other in symbolism or semiotics is basically called denotation and connotation, okay? If that makes sense. So denotation, right, and connotation are two very different things, right? Basically, when you say something like denotating is literal, right? Which is denoting is what you see is what you get, right? So if I say heart, I'm denotating a heart. If I say heart and you think of the image on the left, it's literal. What you see is what you get, right? So I'm literally basically saying it's called a heart. Now, connotation is basically a fancy word for the idea or what it means or what it symbolizes, what it represents, okay? So denote, if I say, what does a heart denote? It means, what does it literally mean or look like? What does it connote, okay, is basically the idea, okay? Or what it represents, okay? So that's the idea. If that makes sense, you can give me a little thumbs up emoji, but that's really at the heart of it, okay? Oh, no pun intended there, okay? So denotation and connotation are basically there, right? So then when you think about the denotations of a heart, then what do we think of, right? Like, what do we think of when we denote heart? We'll think of like muscles versus what does a heart represent is love. If we denote a heart as a muscle, then you're gonna think pumping blood, organs, body, whereas a connotation is gonna be Valentine's Day, feelings, romance, and sweet. So most of the time, graphic designers are connotating, right? They're looking at symbolism, putting that out there as it were, right? And that's how they're thinking about it, right? So let's try another one, okay? Spectacles or glasses, okay? So if I denote literal, what do you think about when you think about glasses? Now, the literal interpretation or denotation, type it in the chat, okay? So when you think about denotation, literal, okay? What do we think about when we literally think about glasses, okay? So if I say glasses or show you a picture of glasses and I'm denoting it, then how would you describe literally a pair of glasses? How would you describe it? What are the parts of it, I guess you can say? Or what does it help us for? Type it in the chat. So glasses, okay. Okay, that's good, Francesca, so seeing. Okay, so what am I denoting or connotating? Type that in too. Like, what do you think about when you think of glasses? Okay, let's break it down that way. When you think of glasses, what do you think about, or what's the first thing that you think about? Okay, and type it in the chat. We're breaking this down. Okay, I want to engage your brain and make this a little interactive. Okay. Okay, having a new perspective. Okay, so one is to see, the other one is to probably have a new perspective. Eyesight. Okay, great. And so denotation, if you're saying sight, right? If you're saying eyes, lenses, glasses, right? This is great. These are you're denoting. Okay. If you're connotating, which is symbolism, right? What does it represent? What is the idea? Then what you're really connotating is like, oh, it could mean glasses is a symbol for intelligence, scientist, teacher. Sometimes glasses can be looked as nerdy, as a physical weakness. I think in the 80s, it was looked at like nerdy, right? And comical. And then now today, it's like, it's intelligent and smart. So symbolism changes through time. It actually like changes. through time overall, right? So if I put glasses in an advertisement, or let's just imagine this is a magazine cover, what am I saying with the guy wearing the glasses? Okay. What am I trying to say in this picture? Okay. What kind of a guy is this? Okay. Or what kind of a person is this? And how would you describe it? Because he's wearing these glasses. What do you think Calvin Klein or the ad company is trying to say to the viewer, the audience, in this particular image? Okay. Going back to the meanings. Okay. Are they trying to say that he's intelligent? Are they trying to say that he's a scientist, teacher? Are they saying he's physically weak? Okay. Or are they saying that he's got great eyesight and or he's short-sighted, right? What do you think that they're trying to say in this? Type it in the chat. Of what does he represent? Okay. So, okay, Francesca says intelligence. Okay. Okay. So what we just saw here is an example of, okay, because the object is paired with the person, I'm saying something, or more specifically, because the person is paired with the product, right? I am saying that CK for Men is making you look intelligent. Does this make sense? Okay, if it does, give me a thumbs up emoji, right? Things have symbols, whether people know it or not. Okay, so the hidden world of a graphic designer is that we know stuff that people don't know. And that language is called symbolism or semiotics. Does this make sense? Okay, because if you can break down things according to their symbols, you're going to be a seriously good designer. Okay, if you don't believe me, look at the ads that are out there. Okay, Black Christmas. Okay, Ultimate Sleigh Ride. What's the symbolism here? What are they trying to say here? First, let's identify the objects. What are the two things you notice in this ad for the film Black Christmas? Okay. So two things. What are you noticing in this image? You can type it in the chat. Okay. And I'm putting my principles of design hat on, right? Like if I'm looking at this image, what's the first thing that you see in this image? What's the focal point? What is the focal point within this particular image? Okay. Okay, let's call it out. Okay, we'll speed it up a little bit. Okay, so it's the ornament. Okay, is it just the ornament? Do I just see a green ornament? What else do I see in this image? I see an ornament, and what else? Okay. Oh yeah, we see the blood too, right? Okay. What do they mean, right? So obviously we see two things happening here, right? An ornament is a symbol, right? It's pretty obvious. So an ornament is a symbol for Christmas, for joy, for theme, and everything of that sort, right? And obviously blood has a different meaning as well, right? Now, in this image, does blood, now people have different interpretations for blood, right? If I just think about heart, is this a love film? Is this if I see blood, does that mean heart, good, love? Probably not, right? But if I see this image, I'm gonna think blood in a couple different ways. Am I denoting or connotating here? If I'm talking about blood in this image, do you think they're denotating in this image or they're connotating in this image? You could type it in. Are they denotating blood, making it literal, what you see is what you get? Or are they actually putting a symbol behind the blood? Okay. Denotating or connotating? What would you say it is? Okay. And again, this is very obvious stuff, right? It's not complicated, but it's a filter. It's a way to filter the symbols within an image. Okay. So is the blood being literally shown as blood? Like, I see blood, this is about blood, this is just blood. Or is there a symbol behind the blood? Is there symbolism to the blood There's symbolism, absolutely. So we're connotating, we're saying this here, okay? All right, how does this relate to your project, okay? Because this is the stuff where now we start to get really into it, okay? Now, I always say this, graphic design is all about critical thinking, okay? You know, it's not about making pretty things, although things do look pretty, right? It's part of the process, but we're trying to communicate visually. It's graphic design, visual communication. And so we're trying to say something to the viewer and to the audience, specifically a specific viewer and audience in a specific way. We're growing up as designers. This is what we're doing. This is what we do, okay? So here's how this stuff works, okay? Now, we see two images from two films here, right? Now, I said denotating, okay? When I say denote, what's literally the things you see in this image, okay? Think about the lighting, think about the poses, think about what they're wearing, right? What kind of lighting is being lit onto them, right? Is it bright or dark? Okay, think about that. All right, is the poses, right? Are they posing in a certain way? How would you describe their poses? Are they, are they strength poses? Are they action poses? How are they posing? Like, what's the body language in the image? Like, how would you describe their body language? Like mysterious action, yeah. And then for costume, like, what kind of costumes are these guys wearing? What kind of outfits do they have? I mean, what do these outfits represent? Are they outgoing outfits? Are these outfits for the summer? Are these outfits for the winter? Are these outfits for a party? Is these outfits for, a social gathering, right? But what are they wearing? Like, what kind of costumes are they wearing? Overall, what kind of outfits are these? Is this an outfit that for a social person? Is this an outfit for a a shy person? Is this what do these say, right? Dark, high end, right? Out and about, yeah. And then what are the props? What are they holding? What are they having in their hands? Obviously they have weapons, right? So when you look at an image or a photograph, and even as you build one, these are the things you kind of want to think about, right? What's the lighting? What are the poses? What are the props? What are the objects, right? What are the costumes, right? What's happening in this image, right? And these are codes, okay? These are called genre tropes or genre codes, right? Any type of theme, fashion, music, right? Sustainability, makeup, there's gonna be common pictures, common objects, common themes within a genre, right? So if I'm gonna do a music magazine, so I'm gonna put a music person on there and it's done. Slow down. What are you trying to say? There's other things. What's the artist wearing? What are they holding in their hand? What kind of lighting is in the photo? Does this make sense, guys? Okay, give me a little thumbs up, right? Those things say something, right? So I'm not trying to say, because I can make an artist look evil by changing the lighting. I can make an artist look bad by putting a gun in their hand in Photoshop. Does this make sense, right? So I can make music go negative real quick in Photoshop, right? Like, we talk about memes, but and it's funny, haha, right? But this stuff can go negative fast, and those are codes. Those are visual codes or genre codes, okay? So let's look at other things, okay? Matrix, Gladiator, right? Okay. Do you see some similarities here? Do you see the code of these posters, right? Hero, dark lighting, okay, same thing. Full body pose, strong, outgoing, right? Weapon, one's a shotgun, the other one's a sword. It doesn't have to be a gun, it could be a sword, but it's a weapon, right? These are codes. These are patterns or genre motifs, codes that are related to the industry, the theme, right? So as you're designing, think about the codes that are common in the area of the subject that you're thinking about, right? So how does this stuff talk to the audience, right? Like, if we're thinking back to like your target audience, so how does this lighting, what does the lighting reflect, or what is the symbolism of the lighting in this poster? So that's the first question. So I asked the question to you. If the lighting is dark with some highlights on the edges, what is that a symbol for? Okay, what does that represent and what is that a symbol for? Okay, what could that mean? What do you think it means, right? What does this sort of half lighting symbolize? What is it connotating? What is it symbolizing? Okay, type it in the chat. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, what is this symbolizing? Okay, what do you think it means? I'll give you guys a second to type it in the chat, because there's definitely more than one answer. I'll say that right now. Okay, any guesses out there? Okay, secrets and mysteries. Okay. What could it mean? Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Let's kind of break it down, okay? Now, I don't want to get too deep into it, okay? But I will say this, okay? Now, the process that we're doing is basically has like an acronym to it, okay? And here's the acronym, okay? It's TEASA or TESA, okay? And basically when you look at an image or deconstruct a graphic or a central image, there are things that I do or I like to do, okay? One of them is, what is the technique, right? Which is like, what is the technique being done to the lighting, the pose, the body, like what's going on in that image graphically, right? In a photo specifically. What kind of pose, what kind of lighting, who's in the image, how are they looking at the image? So that's kind of like the technique, right? And we'll talk about that. There's the effect. What is the impact? What is the effect that's being applied, right? So that's like a Photoshop effect of some sort. What is that Photoshop effect or a technique? How is that affecting the audience? Like, what is it trying to say to that audience? And what could it all symbolize, right? That's the S, or symbolize. And is there maybe an alternative viewpoint, okay? And when we look at this, right, let's just kind of go break this down, right? So the code, lighting, okay. The text uses light to surrounding James Bond. What could that symbolize? Well, it can make him look like he has a good side, right? Now the dark colors could be secret and mysterious, but remember the light is there. So, and there's light in the lettering. So what the designer is saying that, hey, even though the photo has lighting, but look at the letters, I'm repeating something. There is a pattern. And if there's light in the lettering and light in the photo, it's not by mistake, right? Designers never do anything by mistake. It's not decorating. They do it for a reason. And so they're trying to say something like angelic or he's on a good side, okay? So lighting can be used to symbolize certain things, right? When you want to look at a picture, think about words like this creates impression, this symbolizes, this connotes, this implies, this suggests. That's how you can get high marks in graphic design. When you can say things like symbolism, connotation, or what this represents, you're gonna go deeper, you're gonna get better in your design, okay? It's kind of like the why, right? So this is the why of stuff, right? Okay, effect. All right, so if we see light and being used to like represent the text, then what is this designer trying to say to the audience? Well, they're using white lights to symbolize something, maybe angelic wings, make them look heroic, right? Light means good. I think of angels, right? Good side, maybe, angelic of some sort, right? So that's a symbolism that's happening in there, right? Suggesting something. We don't know for sure, but it could be a suggestion towards that, right? And is there other symbols? Could it symbolize something else, right? So maybe it is like white lights that make them look angelic, right? It could also imply other things. It could mean that it's godly, right? It can mean that he's otherworldly. It can mean that he's better above the average male. Okay, so there's like 3 other interpretations here, right? But they all point towards something about the person, something about the picture, something about the image. Okay, does this make sense? If it does, give me a little thumbs up, right? So this stuff, when it comes to symbolism, it means more than one thing. Okay, and so as designers, we really want to try to know what is the thing we're trying to say, but be very, very like aware of what the symbolism is. Okay, again, I'm only brushing the surface here. This is deep stuff, but this is why, you know, this could be a class, right? Because we're thinking about symbolism and the meaning of things on a deeper level, right? Like, what are some other viewpoints that this could represent? Now, I think Francesca said it, right? There's a dark side, a mysterious side. That's another side of this. So there's another alternate viewpoint. So, oh, whoa, what is that trying to say? Oh, it may be that, you know, otherworldly, above the average male, you know, or maybe he's a shadow. Maybe he has a darker side, right? And so that could be the other alternative. So that's kind of going back to what I was saying in the beginning of the class, which is like anything that kind of looks abstract, where it's kind of like, I don't know if it's this or I don't know if it's that. If you can say 2 things with the abstraction, it could be this or it could be that, and you're controlling both this and that, you'll get greater design. That is the good stuff. Okay. So I hit you with a lot, I know, but don't just pick an image and just put the image in there. Think about the pose, think about lighting, think about effects, and you can even add effects. But when you add your gallery effect, if you decide to add gallery effect, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to symbolize? What are you trying to tell me? The viewer, what are you trying to say to your New York fashionista or your Latina makeup, you know, entrepreneur, or Felicia? What are you trying to say to them with these techniques in your graphic? It will flip your game like no other. Okay, it will make you like no other. Okay, and I really feel like I got to show this to you, and then we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and we're gonna get into Photoshop. Okay, so I got to show this to you because I feel like I need to. Because I have a slide here I do want to show you. It takes a minute there as well, okay? Social media, okay? This stuff is working on social media, okay? Okay, and if you don't believe me, like, I will literally show you and prove it to you. But symbolism is happening on social media, okay? How do you think that this stuff is showing up is the question, right? So is that happening in online? Oh, man, okay. I was gonna show that slide, but I'll pull it up in a little bit. But your social media guys also has this stuff happening in there. As a matter of fact, a lot of Instagram posts are very much similar to articles in magazine. Okay, and just think about it for a second, right? Think about the images that are on Instagram. Okay, and we'll just use the anagram here, right? So there's an audience, right? And within that audience, there's going to be some images that are evident, right? Oh man, I really hope I can find the file. But if you think about a post on Instagram is very, very similar to like a magazine article. There's an image, the image has an impact of some sort, and it's trying to communicate a message to you in a way that is speaking towards that audience. And I'll find the post, but goodness gracious, I do have a posting on it that talks about like the semiotics and the symbolism within that image. And I don't think it's in this slide here in this presentation, but I'll pull it up momentarily. But your Instagram projects or Instagram generally has symbolism happening within that as well. And so when I think about those things do have an impact. And I'll find it a little bit later. I get a little bit worked up when I actually like want to show like some of the posts and things of that sort. But there's even symbolism happening in there, okay? So if that's making sense, that's gonna be helpful. I'm not gonna throw it as an exercise, but symbolism is really important when it comes to the work that we try to do. So this is gonna be something that we're gonna really like press in on, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up, it's out there, and I'll try to find it probably within the break just to see where we're at, okay? Okay, so so we're gonna build this central image up. We'll do it together as a class, and we'll talk about type. Before we do that, we're gonna go and take a quick 5-minute break, okay? And we're gonna talk a little bit about central images and rule of thirds and how that all is gonna apply. And we'll definitely talk about rule of thirds when we get back from the break. But at the end of the day, the walk away or the main idea is that when you're finding a good central image, there needs to be symbolism, okay? Some type of symbolism, and how that is portrayed is through lighting, effect, poses, and you can even combine and mix and match within your collage to create symbolism, okay? Okay, let's take a quick 5-minute break. It's 10:29. We'll continue at 10:34. And as soon as we get back, we'll talk about rule of thirds, building up your file in Photoshop, masthead. We'll call it a day. You'll create it and share your links with me. And then tomorrow, and then we'll do some recordings for you guys, and we'll do the next steps on the recordings for tomorrow and the next day. Okay? All right, guys, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 10:34. Okay, guys, we are back. So we're gonna continue here, and we're gonna actually get started with the designing and actually putting together your cover in Photoshop, okay? So you can follow along if you wish. I'm actually going to pull in a couple of items here from the empathy map, and I'm actually gonna I'm probably gonna work on one with I think Francesca, I think I'll use yours as an example to kind of build one up, if that helps. And we'll kind of guide through it, because you have all the elements. I got a name, I have your user profile. So we'll work off of that a little bit, and then we'll kind of build it up from there and kind of make it work, okay? So let me just go take a couple of seconds to kind of step back, and I'm going to open up a couple of files here to set that up, okay? So first thing I'm going to do is basically we're going to create an 8.5 width by 11.5 inch document in Photoshop. So we're going to do that first before I kind of go into like the analytics of it all and just kind of building the profile. So let me go ahead and start off there. And I just want to pull up your file so that way I can kind of go back and forth between the two. Thread and needle, your profile right here, and close that. Close the user persona there, and then we got the cover there. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Okay, so then let's go ahead and move forward. So we're going to create an 8.5 by 11.5 inch document here in the program. So let me go ahead and switch over to Photoshop. Okay, and for this one, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to create new document. Okay, so we're going to create a new document here on the lower left where it's flashing. I'm going to say create new. Okay. Now I could go up to the print tab here on top and kind of look at the different types of pre-settings and templates and things of that sort to kind of work this in. For this instance, I'm basically going to just kind of create sort of a blank document. I don't want to use the template quite just yet, because template is more for presentation purposes. At some point, we can take a design and move it to the template, like for the cover of the magazine when it's done. But for right now, I just want to set up the template of the magazine. Now, this is the big thing, right? A magazine is very different, is not very different, but slightly different than a piece of paper in the height, okay? So if I was going to go here for my print, I'm actually going to direct my attention to the right-hand side of my screen over here. And I'm actually going to create my project. So this is going to be my first name, my last name, magazine cover as the preset detail title. Okay. The width is 8.5 or 8.5 inches in width. So that's correct. The height changes though. It's going to be 11.5 inches. So a magazine actually has half an inch more height within it. So it's actually 8.5 by 11.5. Okay. So that's a big thing you want to keep in mind, guys, is 11.5. So make sure that you're typing in 11.5 here, because if you create a document and it's 11, I'm going to know that you missed that slight detail. So that's the big one. Okay. So we want to make sure it's 8.5 by 11.5. Okay. Resolution will be 300. Okay. We'll keep the color mode actually to RGB because RGB is considered monitor. So we're going to treat this like a digital publication basically. And white background is okay, and all the settings here look pretty good. Okay. So that's our format. Okay. 8.5 inches by 11.5 inches in height. And first name, last name, magazine cover. And I'm going to create the document. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is share it with my teacher. So on the upper right-hand side, obviously we have your shared document. So you can share the document with me. That would be great. It takes a little bit of time depending on the internet and whatnot. But you're basically going to share it with me via email like you have with your other projects. So let's make sure that we're doing that, of course. And we're going to save it as a cloud document. But we'll create a new folder and we'll set that up for a magazine cover or magazine project or magazine cover project. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. Okay. Magazine cover project is going to be the format and end with an empty space. Oops. Okay. And I'll save this inside of my folder as a Photoshop cloud document. And then I'll get a window that will pop up that'll basically say enter email of the person. So that's going to be me. So m_almina@nhs-hs.org. Okay, so same email as before. Okay. And you can share that with me. That would be great. Yeah, you can add a message too if you want to. But that's going to be the email, invite to edit it there, and it'll be sent over my way. Okay. So push that, send it out. Already have access. Okay, great. Move on from there. So that's the next step. You want to make sure you're sharing your docs with me so that if at any point I need to go in and make a change or help you with a particular part, this is going to be really, really helpful, right? To set that up. And now that I have this here, I am now ready to start adding like my central image, right? And so for the central image, like I said, it could be your drawings, it could be your photos, it could be found images online. I'm just gonna pull one from the internet because we're gonna be basing this on Francesca's design, right? So obviously this is called Thread and Needle magazine. So the first thing I'm thinking about is I'm just kind of, in my head, just kind of thinking about Victoria Evans, right? And Victoria Evans is outgoing, dedicated, perfectionist, creative, and stylish. And according to the profile here, because I want to make sure that the image talks to her, resonates with her. Hard worker, $80,000 a year, fashion. She's a fashion marketing person. Goals: be successful at work. Prove to herself that she is essential to the company. Improving her social life, getting out and house more often, travel, and embrace new cultures. So I'm looking for keywords in this profile, right? Travel, world culture, new culture, social, getting out, proving herself. And then, so these are keywords that I'm kind of noting in my head or writing down, right? Victoria recently started a new job in fashion marketing. She moved over from an internship with a marketing firm and is still getting used to the lifestyle and the work, particularly the meetings. She's excited to bring her thoughts and perspective of fashion to inspire people within the fashion industry. Outside of the office, she is creative and likes to explore new music and art, enjoys reading fiction, and will usually go to a mall or retail store to add more clothes to her wardrobe. Also appreciates spending time with friends and family and takes the time for self-care. So this is great. And the quote is, I want to identify how fashion impacts our world and use it as a tool of expression. So tools of expression, outdoor worlds. The biography also gives me an insight into the person, a little bit into her psyche, her ego. This is somebody that is learning new things, wants to learn how to basically, like, it almost seems like used to lifestyle and the work, particularly the meetings. So working collaboratively is something that it sounds like she is trying to learn more about. So I'm taking all these keywords and information and just kind of thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna find images that kind of say these keywords, okay? Frustrations, fast fashion taking over fashion industry, lack of sustainability in the world, going to meetings often. Okay, so balance is key, self-care. So I'm gonna look for something that kind of relates, that will get her attention, right? And in this situation, I think the things that stand out to me is like travel, world culture, fashion, self-care. So I'm gonna hit up and go to unsplash.com now that I've done a little bit of like quick critical thinking on this particular persona. And I'm just gonna look at like travel and maybe look for images that kind of communicate to self-care, travel, maybe fashion. Fashion is a little bit broad, but I wonder, I like fashionista, okay? And then, you know, for those that don't know, you know, the fashionista is like a person of fashion, or by Google's definition, it is a shop. Oh, well, give me a definition instead. A designer of hot culture or a devoted follower of fashion. That's kind of personifies it. So a fashionista is someone that is a devoted follower of fashion, or fashion person, or fashion. Someone's interested in fashion. So if I type in fashionista or fashion, I'm going to kind of create a sort of a series of images that kind of relate to that. And so I'm already starting to see some things that kind of get my attention, like a person that is fashionable, female, women, strong. I'm looking at these images. I see images on the right here that kind of look like the person is traveling, right? And, you know, I want to kind of connect with her in a certain way. Not necessarily male, but we also have male fashionista, so that's totally okay. But I want to get some images here that kind of look interesting. So, you know, this one looks kind of interesting to me. The first one, sunglasses, fashion, really cool background. Definitely looks like I'm fashion traveling, although I don't know if that coat works for that location. But I do like it. So it's cold where she's at, it looks like, okay? So that looks interesting. Or I can even take my own photographs and kind of work with that image. This looks interesting too. This kind of feels more like California fashionista, although we are talking to someone in New York. So that makes a big difference, New York versus that, versus like a California, but perhaps a New Yorker is traveling to California or somewhere abroad. That could qualify as an image as well. So, oops, I downloaded it twice. So we'll look at that as a potential image, okay? So those are a couple images that kind of work. This could potentially work as well. You know, traveling abroad, right? Sort of brick streets, very different. Not, you don't see that a lot in America. So if I contextualize it, that could be another aspect as well. So, it could be New York fashion. But I'm also thinking about like office and power and things of that sort. So looking into the camera with shades. Now, the reason I like this one also is because going back to the symbolism, looking away can mean like I'm traveling, and that could be a symbolism for like I'm looking, I'm engaged, I'm viewing the world. Looking into the camera is almost kind of like I'm saying something to you. I want to connect with you. And perhaps this pose may make more sense to our avatar, our persona, keep on forgetting Victoria. This might actually connect with Victoria, because Victoria is not liking meetings too much, or trying to learn more about how to do meetings better. And that requires FaceTime, and that requires working with people and looking into them. And sometimes it means kind of looking into yourself and being comfortable with yourself with others, right? That's some psychology, some critical thinking happening in there. So maybe an image like this might actually say more to her or connect with her more than like looking away, right? So now I'm thinking symbolically, right? And I'm looking at, and poses say something, facial expressions say something. Her facial expression does look like almost a bit of confidence in there as well. And then the background is very interesting too. It's very dynamic. So I'm thinking about all these things as I'm selecting images, okay? So I do like that one. I think that might be the one to go with. So we'll select that one for the sake of time, because she's looking into the camera, right? I'm gonna come over into Photoshop, and we'll switch over to Photoshop, and I'm going to come into Photoshop, and now I'm going to place that image, okay? So I can click and hold, drag it in, or I can go File, Place, and I'm gonna go onto my computer, not annotate. I'm gonna go onto my computer, look at my downloads folder to place that image into the program. So I'm gonna go to downloads. Here it is. Okay. And we're going to place that image in this particular graphic, okay? Okay. And already Photoshop is trying to scale it according to the image there. I'll probably take a few corners or nodes and bleed the cover out and increase the scale of it as well. Also, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use or make this cover asymmetrical, off the center, right? Also known as rule of thirds. So I'm going to make this and go off the center a little bit of the image, so that she looks a little bit more dynamic. And then the poses as well should also say something, right? Do I want to go full body pose? Do I want to go like a half pose here? Maybe I'll try to go a little bit more half pose within that graphic. And quite frankly, we can even possibly go even a little bit larger. So that way she's like really engaged with the graphic. So that could be a possibility here. I do want to see her outfit. That's important. We do want to see that background a little bit, right? And we want to apply that image in there and get that going, okay? So, it's obviously it's going to depend on the seasons as well. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm already trying to see a little bit there. Now, something like that could possibly work for like possibly a celebrity. If we can get a celebrity pose, that could be a possibility there. And I'm very curious, so I'm always trying to think if like maybe could the alternate image also help as well. So I'm trying to think here. I think this looks a little bit more dynamic too. So we can experiment a little bit too and see where that goes. And if I open up my layers panel, let's see what we have here. So, one image looks obviously looks, very serious, very like intentional. The other one, it looks like very travel-esque. It really depends. I think I like this one. I think I want to go for the maturity side of it and maybe see how it goes. Again, thinking about those keywords like traveler, connecting, sustainability. We're living in a culture now that we're very sort of health conscious. So anyone that kind of looks towards you is very sort of aware and conscious of you. So that's kind of a symbol for consciousness now, I would say. So I kind of like this one best. So we'll stick with that one, and we'll call this one our central image in our layers panel. Okay, and that'll be our central image per se. Okay. Now, it's off the center, so anything that is off the center looks more interesting visually. It's asymmetrical, right? And I'm also strategically opening it up for articles because I'm also going to add articles into this cover as well. So I want to make sure that we're including articles within that. I would probably say 2 or 3 articles would be helpful in this cover. So for your magazines, try like a headline plus 2 additional articles or 3 articles to kind of make it work so we can see what relates. But the next step now I want to do is I want to think a little bit about the title or the name of it. Okay, and for that one I'm going to use my type tool. Okay, now the type tool is new. Horizontal type tool is represented by the letter T. So on your toolbar you'll see a letter T, or you can click onto the letter T on your keyboard and it'll open up the tool panel. When I click onto the tool panel, basically there's a couple ways I can create a text box. I can create it horizontally, vertically, and even those vertical orientations or horizontal orientations can be even modified. But I just want text on the page. So I'm going to go with the horizontal type tool, okay? Letter T, okay? Now, at the very top, when I select my type tool, I'm going to see a series of tools at the very top, right? And labeled in red. The first box on the left in that red box and the red outline is the name of the font. The second entry there is the style of the font, whether it's regular, bold, italic, right? Font size is the third box, and then sharpness or quality is the fourth box. And then we have sort of like these little adjustments, which is like left adjust, center adjustment, right alignment, or alignments. Color of the font, and then that little T with a curve represents sort of like the curvature if I want to curve the font. But for these, probably not per se, depending on the subject. And then we also have our panel button, which looks like a little square here. And that opens up the character panel, which is the panel that controls the font. So we'll open that up so that we can see a character panel there on the left. And we'll even have our layer, we'll leave our layers a little bit below that, or I'll just move it to the left. And then I'll have the character panel here onto the right, but it's on the left, it's also on the right. Same information too. If I take a look at my character panel, the character panel that's here, same information as what's on the browser up there. So if I switch back to the tool, move it in here in the box. So in those red boxes, same info, just displayed differently, okay? So if you like the panel, character panel, you can open up the character panel and have it there, right? Or you can have it on the top, but they're both available at both times depending on what you want to do, okay? I kind of like panels typically, but we'll leave it both ways just for the sake of time. Okay, so here I'm going to now basically select a font. Now, Photoshop does offer font selections, okay? And some are built into your system that you can select, and it's basically based off of things that are loaded onto your file overall. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look for a font and try to download a font in case you maybe want to find additional fonts that you're wanting to download, okay? So the site that I'm going to recommend for that is www.fontsquirrel.com. And so I like FontSquirrel. There's a lot of different sites out there for fonts. I like FontSquirrel personally, basically because they have a lot of free fonts available for me. So we're going to go to FontSquirrel. I'm going to switch back for a second. Okay. And I'm going to open up and go to fontsquirrel.com to find a font of my choice. So squirrel.com, here it is. I have it like bookmarked in my system here. And it is like that. It's a font and the animal squirrel. And it's great. I like FontSquirrel because it basically shows me fonts selected by designers for designers. So it's a curated font site, which has a limited number of fonts, because other font sites like dafont.com, and I'll show it to you, dafont.com or dafont, it's a little bit more popular. These have thousands of fonts built into it, and they're all separated on the top area here according to different themes, so fancy fonts, foreign fonts, Gothic fonts, but there are a lot of very good and very bad fonts here. But again, it depends. It depends on what it is you're trying to create, right? Font Scroll I like because it's a little bit more controlled. It's curated for higher quality, and it's really set up for those folks that want a little bit more of a higher quality font. And if the intent is to create a portfolio piece, then we really want fonts that are carefully selected and have certain qualities to them, right? And if you've never taken a typography class, highly recommend it. Basically, we talk about things like sans serif and serif and sans serif fonts. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then basically this font that's on my screen right here is known as a sans serif, which is basically it doesn't have the little feet or the little legs on the bottom, right? It looks somewhat geometric and somewhat modern at the same time, right? And that's a sans serif typeface, right? No feet, no serif in it. A serif typeface is this type of typeface, and the way you know it's a serif is that it has these little feet or little kind of like sections that stand out at the bottom, right? So if a font has like these little feet or these little arms or little pieces that kind of stick out, those are serifs, okay? And serif typically, historically, go back to the Roman ages, and they typically mean classic, old, and dare I say, high quality, high end, fashionable, right? Because when we associate with things that come from like the old or the classic, Romanesque, right? We think about the Renaissance and some of the best pieces of art and design ever created in humanity. And so it is the best of the best. So there's a symbolism to serif that you could say represents best, high quality, like very, very high end. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, give me a little thumbs up emoji. But the serif is very much like that. That's why when you look at some fashion labels and fashion magazines, they do kind of have like this high end to them. Look at the font. I'm guaranteed that it's the font that really communicates that. And again, there's ways to say high end as a sans serif, right? So and a sans serif is more modern. Or it's more modern. It does not have the feet like I showed you. So there is a little bit of a difference, right? And so the font that you select has a symbolism behind it. So I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about my avatar. Excuse me. Here we go. I am thinking about Victoria. I'm thinking about who she is and how she communicates. This is a very sort of progressive, contemporary, fashionable person, right? I don't think this is someone that really likes the classical things, although you could argue both. But she seems like she's quite into now. She has her cell phone, right? She's on the go. It's 21st century, influences her social media, psychology, music, technology, modern ends, right? And the apps that influence her are like Instagram, Google Calendar, Pinterest. These are very high-end sort of apps. And these apps typically also use graphic codes like sans serif typefaces, right? That's why I like the profiles, because the profiles are hints towards design styles, even fonts. So if she's a tech person, likes technology, I know that world typically does not use serifs with the little feet. They use sans serif. So as much as I love Cuesta, I'll probably push for more of a sans serif typeface. So what could that be? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of sans serif typefaces that are out there. And so I'm going to be sans serif typefaces. So I'm going to definitely look at some typefaces here that look, somewhat modern and communicate quality. I even think about like Apple and some of the the font faces, the typefaces that they use. I want a font that says something fashionable, but at the same time it says something like modern and progressive. And there's a lot of ways to kind of look at these things and get it in. But typically what I like to do is I like to download like maybe 3 or 4 fonts to kind of explore that world a little bit and see what's available to me. So, and I just kind of go instinctively and I kind of think about like what could be some possibilities. So this Able font looks kind of interesting. I'm going to click onto it, and I'm going to go to Test Drive. And Test Drive is really great because I can, believe it or not, I can actually sample my sites or my fonts. So right here, when I click onto a font, there's a bar here at the top. And right here in the middle, there's a little button that says Test Drive. And if I take my arrow and show you right here where the test drive is literally that. I can actually click onto Test Drive, type in thread and needle. And I'll even try it a couple different ways. Thread, ampersand, which is the symbol for and. Oh, where are you, ampersand? There it is. Thread and needle. Okay, maybe I have to make it a little bit smaller so I can see them both. So this looks kind of interesting. I kind of like the second one instead, which is the little ampersand. And maybe I'll even try an upper caps. So thread and needle. Okay, looks kind of interesting graphically there. So I'll work with that, and we'll try that out. And I'm doing this maybe with 2 or 3 or 4 different fonts at a time, and I'm going to download it. So once I give it a test drive, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to direct my attention to the download TTF, which is the true type font file format. So TTF is the file format, and it works for both PC and Mac. So I'm going to download it. And I notice that there's a little folder on the lower left of my Chrome or upper right of my Safari. That's the folder where the font is stored. If I click onto that folder, then Chrome is going to open it, and it's going to show me where my font is on the inside. And let me go ahead and switch over so we can see my entire screen. So you can see my desktop. And as I download the image, right, and I go to my downloads folder, I'm going to find here the Able font at the top. Double click. Okay. Gonna go to the font here, which is Able Regular. If I hit spacebar, there's the font, .ttf. Modify that. And I can tell that there's a modify, there's a site, and then under kind, it says true type font. I'm going to double click onto the font. And inside of my MacBook, a font manager opens up. And if you have a PC, it's probably the font manager. I think it's called Font Manager in the PC. And it's asking me a question. It's saying, hey, would you like to, I have Able font, regular format, AB, here's the letters, here's the numbers associated, uppercase and lowercase. And it's asking me the question, do you want to install the font because it's not installed? And I want to say, yes, I want to install it. So I'm going to click on to install font. Font Book, which is the program that manages fonts in my MacBook computer, opens up, and it's the same in all Mac computers. It's called MacBook. Or Font Book, I should say. And then I automatically see here on my screen 3 pieces of information. Okay, it says, you're the user, Able font has been selected, and here it is on the right. And not only that, there's a little slider here, and I can actually hold the click, and move the slider up and down so I can see letters up close and personal. Okay, so that's really helpful. Okay, when I see it in my program, that means it's loaded into my system, which should mean that when I go back to Photoshop, it should be available in my drop-down list or my character panel under Able. And here it is right here. Able, or I could type it in. I can type in ABEL, and it shows up under Able Regular, but it is there. Okay, so whether it's on my panel or is in my menu bar here on top, we're going to plug it in. Okay, So regular, the font size is 250. Well, let's see. I'm gonna click once onto my format, and it's huge. So I'll probably need to reduce the size. So maybe let's bring it down to like 72 points for right now. And let's type in uppercase thread and needle. I'm going to add magazine, but I definitely want to make some adjustments here, okay? Now, as I'm building my magazine, I'm thinking to myself, colors, right? What is the colors that I want to use in this particular cover, right? I like to personally pull color from photos and kind of make it work that way. So you can as well. And so I always tend to look at color and I just pull it from the photo. So the colors in my photograph are, predominantly black, it's white, a little bit of bluish gray, and some highlights of red happening in here as well because of her scarf, and maybe a tinge highlight of red and secondary highlight of blue, almost teal. So I want this to stand out, right? My goal is to get Victoria's attention, right? So I'll probably stick with a red in this particular image, but I have some challenges. I want to make sure that as I'm selecting the font that I want it to sort of stand out. And maybe red will not work. Now I'm thinking a little bit more about it. But I want to definitely pull it in. Or we could even go black as well. I mean, I almost forgot the dominant color is black. So, okay, so we'll try that. Now, the other thing I want to do is that I want to kind of play with the spacing between the letters. So I kind of want to pull in a little bit, and I want to make my masthead kind of like a title. And mastheads should kind of feel like titles, logos. There should be something kind of unique about them that's done in such a way that kind of looks kind of interesting. So, maybe I'll pull in on the spacing a little bit there to kind of play with it. Maybe I'll go in a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more bold or not, or keep it a little bit there. And then possibly what I could even do is I might need to even modify a little bit of the graphic in the background just to kind of make it stand out, because I really want the masthead to kind of work in the image and kind of make it stand out, okay? So we have that as an option. The other thing I'm gonna do is that I'm actually gonna try a couple other options for the masthead, okay? So I'm actually going to create 2 more or even 3 more mastheads, okay, under the same name, different fonts, just so I can try it out. Okay, so thread and needle. Okay, I'm gonna highlight it. And I'm gonna try a different font because I really wanna try some different fonts in this design, okay? Click down the list, or you can go to character and you can actually preview your fonts in the system. So if you notice, every time I look at my list of fonts, on the right-hand side, it gives me a little sample of the font in a small sort of thumbnail. And it even lets me see the font as well on the cover, okay? And I have a good number of fonts here. I have a lot of different fonts available. I'll probably have to play with the sizes a little bit more here and there, but I'm definitely seeing some samples of the fonts that have been preloaded into my system, and I can kind of play with that as well. Okay, so just to kind of see what kind of works there. Okay, now I really want to slam dunk it a little bit. So I want to make sure that I'm getting some interesting samples here within the cover, if that works, and also going back into maybe my font and looking at additional different fonts that I can play with and experiment with, okay? So it is a process, right? This is all a process here. I kind of like Acre too in my list, so I'm going to click onto it. Oh, it's going to take me to a different site, so I have to be cautious of that too. Sometimes you might have a font that's going to require you to register at a different site. So we're going to save that because I want to make sure I'm keeping to the time. But now I'm thinking in my head, maybe I want to try a bold font. I want something that kind of is very bold, that kind of stands out. And there are about 8 pages of different fonts they could choose from. You know you're a good designer if you're spending time looking for your fonts, okay? Not 2 minutes, not 3 minutes, unless of course you've had years of looking through them. But starting out, you really do want to kind of spend time exploring your fonts and getting a taste, building a taste for fonts, okay? There's going to be fonts that you're going to like more so than maybe fonts that I might like, right? And there's going to be fonts that are just proven throughout time and history, like Helvetica and Times Roman and Futura, which are sort of like the legendary fonts that have been that have stood the test of time, as they say. And you learn about that more in your typography class. But you know, I want to make sure that I can get a little bit more. You know, there's those fonts that I can even explore as well. So I want a bold font. I think I like Bebas up here a little bit because I do kind of like the narrowness and the boldness of this font. And if I take it for a test drive, I'm going to type in thread and needle. So that's looking pretty interesting. And I think I'm going to squeeze in the spacing between the letters a little bit just to kind of do that to make it work. So I'm going to download Bebas. And I'm going to load that into my system. It's funny with this music, I feel like it's a cooking show. I don't know why. I feel like I should be like, have a hat on or something for this show. Or just wear like a waiter's outfit. That'd be a cool YouTube show, right? Okay, so stay focused, Miguel, stay focused. Okay, so now I'm going to open up the, and play music too, guys. Like, you know, like if you need to get into the zone and you want to play music that relates to your subject, go for it, right? Like I'm a big believer that music is, again, it's also symbolic. So if you feel like your project has a song or an album to it, right? Play the music, play that song, get inspired, keep yourself motivated. You know, I always play music related to a project. That's kind of like a little like quirk that I have. Like, so if I do something fashion, I always like to think of Europe and I play French music like you hear on the right now. So I do kind of get to that. Although I know that like New York is one thing. I like, you know, it has its own look and feel, but I do feel like fashionable, quote unquote, when I play like music that reminds me of a place of fashion, like a France of sorts. So I play French music. So that's the reason why I'm playing French music. I'm going to install the font. Okay. We're going to get that in there. It's loaded. I see it on my font book program. So I'm going to minimize all this, get back to Photoshop, and let's do Bebas, right? So let's get Bebas in there. Good. Hey, where'd you go, Bebas? And sometimes it might take a minute for it to load. So you might have to look for it on your list. Here it is, Bebas space Kai. And I'm going to increase the font size to kind of fill up the space up there. And I can type in the font size, or I can click onto the letter T to kind of increase it. And I'm even going to sort of decrease the spacing. So right here where it's kind of like the V and the A on the lower right on my character panel, I see negatives and I see positives. So this VA here is called tracking. So like a train track. So if you think of your letters as a train track, there's like letters in between. I'm going to track it, meaning I'm going to either space it out, track it out, like a train track, or I'm going to space it in, which is a little secret in typography. If a font doesn't work, try to squeeze the letters in or track them closer like a train track, and you're going to get some results. So right now it's at 0, but if I go -50, it tracks tighter, and I just gave myself more room to increase the size of the masthead, the title. That's a little secret in typography. Go in on the spacing, you have more room to increase the scale. If that makes sense, you can give me a thumbs up emoji, but I'm just kind of showing it to you in real time how this game works in design, right? So increase the scale, And now I have like this really big and bold title. Looks kind of cool and looks interesting, definitely standing out. And I want to create some contrast of size by making something smaller. And that is going to be the word magazine. So I'm going to add some contrast to this title, or the top third section, by basically adding a smaller font. And that's going to be maybe a 72. And I'm going to click onto my type tool. Oh, no. I don't want that. I'm going to create a new text layer. Click. Make it smaller, 72. Got to be smaller than that, maybe 36. And I'm going to add the word magazine to create some contrast. So Thread and Needle magazine. I might just decrease it further. And I might even just go the opposite way, spread it out. So contrast of space, contrast of size, Thread and Needle magazine. It's starting to look interesting. Something bigger, something smaller in that top third section of the graphic. I have my layers here, type layer, my image, and notice that on my layers panel, the text layer is represented by a letter T on the left and the word that I just typed in on the right. So a text box or text layer is evident in your layers panel. I can click onto the word magazine, or I can click onto the word thread and needle, and I can move things up, move them up and down, and it auto selects it in my panel because the word auto select is clicked over here. So this little button here that says auto select, if it's checked off, that means wherever I click with my move tool will automatically select the layer in Photoshop, and it moves it automatically. You can shut it off too if you want to, but auto select is helpful. So I just click it and move, kind of like I do in Illustrator for those in Illustrator. Okay, so I've just completed two steps. I completed a central image that I felt relates to Victoria and her interest in fashion, right? And I also selected a font that I felt was, quote, symbolically modern, and which was a sans serif, and modified the tracking to make more room so that it can be the largest thing or the focal point in the design. So my brain is going between this sort of like principles of design and symbolism. And I'm going back and forth, thinking about every choice that I'm making and asking the question, is this talking to Victoria? Is this going to connect with Victoria? Is this going to connect to a woman that is trying to make her name in the world? Is this speaking fashion? Is this right? Like, I'm constantly asking those questions, right? And as I move forward, and I have that style, that look, that feel, then I can move on to the next stages, which is obviously going to be adding the articles, adding contrast, and fine tuning, which is going to be in the next videos there. Okay, so I want to stop it there, give you guys some time to build, design, but hopefully that makes sense and we have that. And I'm going to save my file. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I'm going to save this and do save as that file, thread and needle. It's saved into the cloud, but it's going to go into my assets there. Okay, so that's going to be our plan, and that's how we're going to move in the project overall. Okay, so let me go back and just kind of step it out a little bit. Okay, because I know I took a minute there. Today we are again just going to be working on those two things. Okay, and those goals are obviously going to be the central image, right? Symbolism related to your audience, and titles, experimenting with different fonts for your title of your magazine, 8.5 by 11.5, building it up from there. So those are the objectives for today. Okay. Was this helpful? Was this helpful to you guys? If it is, give me a little thumbs up. But I just wanted to walk you through that process, walk you through my team, and just kind of show you some of the steps and how that's going to play out. Okay, try it. Give yourself some time and build up from there. Okay, so if you have any questions, type it in the chat or stick around after the recording. But now what you're going to do is create your document, share your document with me, okay? Find those central images, drawings, photographs. You can edit them, apply image adjustments. I didn't even adjust the image also to this graphic, right? So for some of you, you can even add an effect or add an image adjustment to change color tones. It really depends on your viewer. So have some fun with it, get creative with it. Try different versions. You could do, like 2 or 3 versions. You could share those versions with me, and just experiment. Like try and try again, right? Like it doesn't have to be right the first time. Just try different variations, different images, and then go to sleep, wake up tomorrow with a fresh eye and say, you know what, I think I could change this or add on to that and make modifications. Okay, so that's going to be our game plan and going forward from there. Okay, so that's going to be today's lesson. You'll be building that. Now tomorrow and Thursday, it's asynchronous. Okay, so let me just mention this. Okay, when we go asynchronous, the next step is basically you're going to add some contrast to your articles. So you're going to add, once you find your central image, once you put in the title, the masthead in that font, in that style of choice related to your audience, then the next step is that you're going to contrast those, as I did, the headline and your cover lines, your articles as well, right? So you're going to have a main article related to this person. So I'm going to continue the after we conclude, I'm going to continue with this project for Francesca, and I'm going to add to it. I'll have a pre-recording. I'll have it loaded up shortly, and I'm basically going to create an article related to that image, right? I'm going to put 2 font sizes, contrast the colors as well, right? And then after I add that, I'm going to continue to add more articles, continue to add 2 or 3 more articles to the design to kind of make it appealing. Okay. So I'm going to continue to think about my target. Is it talking to are these articles communicating with Victoria, talking to my audience member? Is it saying the things that I wanted to say? And then at some point also, I'm going to also add some barcodes, date lines, and also the issue number perhaps as well. Okay, so we'll be adding those little details, which will kind of add some quality to the piece and make it look a little bit more interesting. Okay, so we'll add those moving forward. Okay, when we get together on Monday, my hope is that we have a relatively complete design, okay, of some sort. So, right, so we got something that looks kind of like, cover line, an image. Maybe we have those the supporting articles. Maybe we have some banners happening in there. But by Monday, we're going to review your designs. So have something ready to go. Cover, title, articles, minimum, right? Headline, 2 or 3 sub articles, okay? Barcodes, everything of that sort. Be ready on Monday, because we're going to jump in and do some one-on-one, and I'll review. We're going to do one-on-one and review of your designs, okay? So that's going to be our setup for today. All right, guys, we're at 11:29. I'm going to finish up some recordings. Feel free to stick around if you would like. If you decide to, great. You do not have to. But if there's any questions, feel free to email me, and then we can go forward from there and set you up. Okay. Okay. I'll stop the recording now, and then I'll ask one more question there too. Okay. So here we go.